Hello, everyone. My name's Jenny Lee Taylor. I've been invited by Michelle to come in and talk to you about breathwork and how you can decouple or take the zap out of trauma that might be influencing your life day to day. So I don't know if anyone is ever on a really hot day. I'm not sure where everyone is in the world, but in Australia on a really hot, dry day, if you go outside and you go to get in your car, you get a zap from all the electrostatic that's in the air. And sometimes when we go through life, we tend to get zapped by events in our life. You know, we have a reaction to them that might be really out of context with what the actual event is. You could be, you know, driving along in your car and suddenly someone cuts in front of you and you just have this complete out of context reaction to that. Or someone might say something to you at work and you're all of a sudden, you go from sort of like 0 to 100 in the anger states, or in the breaking down and crying states, or in the you know, whatever emotion is coming up for you. And most of the time this is a normal reaction that takes place that feels abnormal, because over the years we've been suppressing our emotional responses to things. So today I'm going to talk to you about how breathwork can really help you to take the zap or the voltage out of past traumatic memories. And breathwork, in the context that I work with it, I was just talking to Michelle before, breathwork is different to yoga therapy, or the use of your breath through yoga or martial arts, or maybe sporting events and things like that, in that all those types of things really help you calm the nervous system. And I use that type of breathwork day to day. Like I'm a meditator. I meditate twice a day, and I use my breath to manage my state in any moment. Yet in a breathwork session, we use the breath therapeutically to really activate the body. And breathwork is based on the premise that every experience we have in life, from absolute trauma to pure joy, has an emotional, physiological and mental response to it. And what happens if you don't get to express that emotion sufficiently and process it in the moment, then it kind of starts layering itself in your body, and your body holds on to the memory of that. An example might be that, you know, when you were a young child, you were constantly told that, you know, shut up. Children should be heard but not seen, seen but not heard. Sorry, you can't, you know, stop crying. Why are you crying? You're a crybaby. Those sorts of things, and you learn that, or we've learned in Western society in particular, that it's not appropriate to express our emotions in the moment. Yet the expression of emotion is the body's natural response to whatever's going on for you at the time. So it's actually a way of transmuting or transferring the energy that's being built up in your body around a specific experience, and allowing it to flow out. So it has no, you know, it comes up, you cry, you get angry, you respond in a way, and then it just dissipates and you move on. When we don't get to do that, it just stays in our cellular memory. So every time an example of how you were feeling in that moment as a young child, as you were growing, or as, you know, any time in your life, comes up again, where it elicits the same response, and it may be a totally unrelated incident, then all emotion comes to the surface. That's why there's a lot of the time little things can come up in your life, and you just get a blown out of proportion response to that. And what happens in a what happens is that those responses that get held in your body just stay there as a latent experience waiting to be triggered again. You might hear that word triggered a lot in self-development type work. It triggers you. So what happens when every experience gets held in your body at the cellular level is that it's okay for something that's making you feel joyful. That's great. We all want to, feel that rush, that heady rush we get when we, we go up on stage and receive an award for something, or when we climb a mountain, or when a loved one hugs us, or when someone gives us an example of how much they love us. We all want to keep those. And what happens is with trauma, because we've learned at a young age that it's not okay to express emotion, that just keeps building up and building up and building up. The opportunity in a breathwork session is to bypass what we think we know is going on in our mind, to connect your breath to the spirit, and go straight to what's being held in your cellular memory. So a great example of this was and I'm writing a case study on this, was a client came to me, particularly in this season of COVID-19, only a couple of months ago. And in Australia, we've also had one of the worst bushfire seasons on record. We've had basically the whole of the East Coast was on fire. And this particular person was starting to experience at the beginning of the season, which was November in Australia with the bushfires. We had lots of smoke around. There was, literally you couldn't see the sun for days. There, right up the East Coast because of there was so much sun, so much smoke around. She was starting to get a shortness of breath. And people would say to her, well, that's just normal because, there's a lot of smoke in the air, we're breathing a lot of this, and it's not good for our respiratory system. Yet she knew that she was actually, she was also going to some sort of panic attack. When COVID-19 happened and we started to see restrictions here in Australia in late March, she was getting these unusual responses to, seeing people being taken away in ambulances, seeing people laying in hospital beds with masks on, just the sounds and the noise and the general panic and anxiety that was sitting in the whole community at that time. And was finding herself over those 4 months more and more losing her breath and, not being able to walk as far as she could walk with her dog and things like that. And just really noticing that it was really unusual for her to be feeling that. And it culminated in her admitting herself to hospital because she thought she was having a heart attack. That she went into hospital, they did all the tests on her, and all the tests came back normal, and they couldn't figure out why. So the next day they sent her home. Now, this person has done a bit of personal development work before, and she had an idea that the memory of her father dying 5 years previous, who died from a condition that was a result of long-term shortness of breath, could be linked. So she thought that she was maybe some attachment to her father was bringing on this unusual overreacting to what she thought was overreacting to the current circumstances. So she came to a breathwork session. And her history was that we sort of, part of breathwork is a consultation. So we sat in a consultation and we talked about, what's her history, what sort of trauma she had in her life, what sort of incidences she had in her life. And she had a whole series of things relating to her lungs, it turns out. And one of them was that she swallowed a stone when she was 5 years old. And, during the consultation, she just said, matter of factly, that's what happened. When we connected her in a breathing cycle, we, in a specific breathing cycle called conscious connected breathing cycle, she actually went back to the memory of that. So we're bypassing what she thought she knew. She thought she had an attachment to her father. She dismissed the fact that she'd swallowed a stone and didn't think that was related anymore as a child. And her breath connected her with the visceral feeling and memory of being the 5-year-old, being bundled up all of a sudden out of the street where she was playing with her friends, being taken inside, slung upside down, you know, everyone around her panicking, the sirens are going, she ends up in an ambulance, she ends up in hospital, she doesn't know how she gets there, she passed out at some point, you know, all this is, the memory of it is coming up in a breathwork session. And by encouraging her just to keep breathing through that process. Now, breathwork is a really gentle, supportive process for letting go of the emotional tension. So she's 5, she can't breathe, she's got a tracheo hole in her neck. She's being, you know, she just doesn't know what's happening around, all this panic and stuff around her. And through the process of breathing, she was able to actually breathe out the physical, emotional, energetic response to that. So they talk about, there's a great movie called Energy or Emotion, Energy in Motion. And breath is energy. You know, when we breathe air, we can actually, we're breathing in the energy, universal energy, or energy of the universe that everything has as it vibrates on this planet. You know, computer I'm looking at, the desk I'm looking at, the wind outside, the wood, the trees, the birds, everything has energy. So when we breathe, we have the potential to breathe energy. And by breathing this energy through breath work, this client had the opportunity to breathe out all that emotional energy that was stuck in her body around this incident of her as a 5-year-old. And through that process, she got to a point where she understood everything that went on with her as a 5-year-old. So it was beyond what she was thinking it was. It was actually the visceral, somatic, body, emotional, spiritual memory of that incident, not just what she remembered as a 65-year-old woman now, as a 5-year-old. And then, so the result of that was that she was able to get some real insights into how she was feeling, how her family reacted. She met energetically with her parents, or her parents coming into the room, all this detail around a single memory gets held in your body at a cellular level, whether you remember it or not. So this process can take you to find all that, and felt the love of her parents, understood their concern and trauma at the time, and was able to breathe through that and release it. 2 days later, I rang her and she said, I can't believe it. She said, I'm not short of breath anymore. When I remember that incident now, I don't remember it with any voltage, I call it. There's no voltage attached to it. So she's not being triggered by all the events that are still occurring around us in Australia. You know, we're still in lockdown, we can't move, we're still hearing statistics about people who are contracting COVID-19, that kind of thing. She's not triggered by that anymore. 2 weeks later, I rang her, the same thing. 3 weeks later, she says, I actually went for a run with my dog. I don't have this. And she said, for the life of me, I can't even try not to breathe properly. So in this instance, the actual trauma was actually related to her breath. Yet you can take the same a concept and relate it to any trauma in your life. And the great thing about breathwork is that you don't even have to know or think you know what it is that's not working for you. Like, you'll have some sort of reason for wanting to make a change. It might be that you're feeling overwhelmed. It might be that you're feeling empty. You might be just feeling like you're on this circus roundabout that you can't get off. You might be finding yourself going down the path of addiction or anxiety or PTSD, or just feeling like you don't know who you are anymore. All those things could be reasons why you seek out breathwork to help you. And what happens is that the breath and your body has this innate intelligence, because your body is really a physical record of everything that's ever happened to you in your life, from the minute you were conceived to however old you are now. Your body has the intelligence to know what is going on for you at an emotional and spiritual level, and what needs to be released to support you to let go of those things that are happening in your current life. So another example was that I had a client come to me and say that she was, just had these relationships that weren't working, and she felt that it had happened so often that people would leave her, that she felt that she wanted to actually inquire into what her role might have been in that. And in a breathwork session, she and at that stage she had a husband, and they were shopping in one of the big shopping malls, and her husband walked off to go to a shop, and she didn't know where her husband was. It's quite an active shopping mall, so lots of people around. All of a sudden she had this out of character reaction to standing there by herself and not knowing where her husband was. Now, she's a grown woman and has done that thousands of times, yet in this instance she had a panic attack. She didn't know where her husband was. She got out of control with her breathing. She just felt that she couldn't move, had all those symptoms of panic and anxiety, which she'd never had before. So she was coming to breathwork for that reason, and where the breath took her in that session was to discover that she had a real attachment to being abandoned as a child. She had a whole history around that. So we were able to breathe around the abandonment, really get to the reason she was hanging on to that as the script for her life, and was able to let it go and resolve that. So breathwork can be really used in that way to really get some insights into why it is we take on board all the things we take on board as we grow. And everything's the right happening. So the fact that you behave in a certain way when you're 5, or have a certain way of reacting to things, because our parents and our adults, they know more than you, right? So, and you're modeling yourself off them. So you take on board what they say is to be true for you, or you react to a situation because you've had to do that to stay in survival mode, especially if you're a victim of abuse or something like that. So you had no other choice as a young person. But as we grow, because that gets held in our body at a cellular level, as we grow, we unconsciously think that we have to keep doing it that way. And that's not the case, because in adulthood, the circumstances are different. We're grown people now. We know more about the world, and yet at an unconscious level, our body-brain system wants to link in with whatever we haven't processed from the past and bring it into the future as to react in the same way. I'm trusting this makes sense to people, because I feel like I'm just talking. Has anyone got any questions around that? Is there no? Okay, great. So breathwork is talks a lot about the 4 bodies, and that is the mental body, the physical body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body. And if you take what is any event in your life, it's not only your brain that's thinking about what's going on, it's also you're also having a physical reaction, and you might be standing tall, or you might be slumping, or some other, or you might be in pain, and you have an emotional reaction. So some sort of emotion comes to the surface, and in some way the essence of who you are is being impacted, as well as your thought process. So breathwork works with those 4 bodies, and there's even a 5th called the energetic body. So it's a really gentle and beautifully supported way for you to really get to know yourself through the mode of your own breath. So a breathwork session is very it's like a conversation that you have at an unconscious level, bringing the unconscious material up to the conscious level, and then having this conversation with yourself via your own breath to really get to understand what's going on at the essence of who you are. Now, one of my favourite parts of this work is the soul work that happens. I work with a lot of men and women who have reached a point in their life where they feel like they feel empty. They don't feel like they're not themselves anymore. Maybe they left parts of themselves, in another relationship, or with at a location, or through a traumatic event, have felt they lost part of themselves, which they haven't been able to reclaim again. And through the process of breathwork, we can work with where that part has gone and really start reclaiming your parts. And that's a whole other topic that I won't go into now. But so this whole idea of being able to heal the present, heal the past in the present moment. So really looking at what's happening in your life, noticing how you're reacting to events in your life. And if you feel like you're reacting rather than relating to those events, then it could be that there's some past memory being held in your body that may or may not be related to trauma. And trauma is, there's no scale, I guess, because what could be traumatic for one person won't be traumatic for another person. So sometimes these things come back to like a single moment in time where someone yelled at you and you didn't feel like it was warranted, like you were 4 years old or something, and you got into trouble for something, and you have still to this day have no idea why or what it was that you did wrong. Those sorts of events can be just as traumatic as having a major car accident, or in terms of your physical response and the impact it has in your life. It's really important that we understand, and as a breathwork practitioner, really hold that everyone's so different, and that the scale is, or the importance to someone isn't judged in terms of comparing it to everyone else, because everyone is so different. So that's kind of summing up what I wanted to talk about today about how breathwork can help you resolve past trauma. If you do have any questions that you want to ask me afterwards, by all means send them to my email address or something like that, which I'll give you in a moment. But I did want to leave you with a breath exercise, I guess. Now, backtracking a little bit, breathwork is a really generic term for a whole heap of breathing modalities that are out there in the world, and I'm really happy to say that breathwork is on the rise in terms of people's wanting to engage with their own breath. And the basic level of breathwork is just learning how to breathe properly. We tend to have gone through life, particularly in Western society, not breathing to our full capacity. And what that does is, because breath is breathing in energy and is breathing in the energy of life, you're actually doing yourself a disservice by not breathing properly. So the basic, learning how to breathe in and breathe out in a full breath rather than maybe in and out of your chest level, is where people can start with gaining awareness of their breath, checking in with yourself every day about and every moment about how many times a day you actually hold your breath. I don't know if people watching would recognise that they do that. When I started on this journey, I realised that I was holding my breath mostly when I was actually on the computer working on a project that had to be delivered, and I had a time frame to go to. There was a lot of pressure, and I'd sit there, hold my breath, and then every now and then I go, "Oh, I'm holding my breath. I better take a breath." So that is if we're going to break it right down to how do you engage with your breath more, is actually start to notice how you're breathing. And then if you're doing yoga, there's a whole heap of yogic breaths that have different functions on your and can help your mind, body, spirit. There's mindfulness techniques that use your breath daily. There's meditation techniques that use your breath daily. So just really starting to get to know your breath at that level, and at the very least be able to connect with your breath to enhance your life. Because I was talking to Michelle before, and she was saying how she uses breath in her yoga therapy work to help people calm the nervous system, particularly around anxiety and panic and those sorts of things that come up in people's lives. And I encourage all my people to do the same. It's, notice when that's rising in you, and allowing your breath to help you change your state in the moment. The other thing, the other way I use breath is to, in between breathwork sessions, is to, if I'm feeling that day, I'm feeling flat or unenergetic or something like that, I'll turn that around in my head and go, what would I be doing if I wasn't feeling flat and unenergetic? Well, I'd be feeling energetic and vital. So I consciously breathe in vitality, and I consciously let go of that feeling on the out breath of feeling flat and unvital. And what that does is just change your state in the moment. So I just wanted to leave you today with an example of 20 conscious connected breaths. So connecting your breath is a little different to other types of breath work, in that we take out the pause from the top and the bottom of your breath. So essentially it's a breath in and out as a one breath. And unlike hyperventilating, it's not staying up in your chest. So bringing it down into the fullness of your belly and breathing in and out without pausing. And we can do this, and we can do this 4 rounds of 5 breaths once a day. That's all you need to do it. And if you haven't been a person who has taken notice of your breathing over time, then this might feel really odd to you, or you might feel that your energy in your body is different or something like that. That's okay. Just do, 1 round of 5 breaths, then 2 rounds of 5 breaths, up to 20 rounds a day. That's all you need to do, no more than that. So if you just sit and bring your awareness to your breath, and we're going to breathe in 4 short breaths, and then 1 really deep breath in without pausing. So I'll give you an example. So it's in through the nose, in and out through the nose. So it's And then on the 5th breath, really deep in. Out through your mouth. So just noticing how that feels in your body. And you might feel, you know, maybe some tingling in your fingers, or you just feel this movement around your body. That's okay. It's just your breath connecting with the energy in your body. So if you do that 4 sets of 5, so 4 breaths in and 4 breaths out, a little bit shorter, and then 1 long deep breath at the end, then that is the 20 connected breaths that Leonard Orr talks about. Doing that every day for the rest of your life will improve your life without doing anything else. And I just wanted to leave that with you, Michelle. I think I can hand it back over to you. Let's see where she's gone. Okay, she's disappeared. I'm just trying to think of what some of the questions might be. I think to sum it up, there's a couple of elements. One is that every experience in our life has an impact on our body's cellular memory. Like we hold it from the moment we were born to however old we are now. And if you think about it, that makes sense, because in the human flesh form, we started in the mother's womb, and even though we may not be able to remember things previous to, you know, say 3 or 4 years old, our body has experienced it. The other point was that trauma or any emotions from the past that are unresolved or not expressed appropriately at the time can stay in your body as negative emotions or unwanted or uncompleted emotions that then build up over time. So in your present day, you can get emotional reactions to things that seem out of context or out of, I don't want to say the word severity, but not severity. And that the other thing was that, and I gave a beautiful example of a case study there. The other thing was that the breath is the bridge really between what you consciously know and what is being unconsciously held in your body. So it's kind of like it taps into the body's innate intelligence around that. And it's a beautiful way to release emotional mass. You know, why would you want to go to breathwork? And that would be to really gain some insights and to be able to live life relating to life rather than reacting to life. Being able to be free of past beliefs, past negative emotions, or past held emotions that you don't need anymore because you want to move forward in life. It enables you to free up and be more available for life, I guess, moving forward. You don't need to take the guilt from the past and bring it into the future as fear, I guess, which I really haven't even touched on today, but is a huge subject. So I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity.